All right, hello and welcome everyone. If you can just find your seat, those of you in the back, perhaps. Yeah, okay, lovely. Hi everyone, my name is Jenna Mittelmeier. I am lecturer in international education at the University of Manchester. I hope that you're all caffeinated and feeling a little bit more awake for our session this morning. What we're going to be focusing on with this session is turning our attention to the student voice and to the student perspective. I think we've done a lot of talk about students, about their needs, about their wants, and we haven't heard a lot from the students themselves, except for Amira's lovely introduction to her experience in our last panel. So the format of today, we're going to show a short video that the British Council has really kindly developed specifically for this session, where students from Uzbekistan and Ukraine have reflected upon their experiences learning in an EMI context. I'm going to then talk a little bit about my research in the Netherlands, looking at students' experiences in an EMI context. And then I'm going to turn the attention to the panelists to react to some of the challenges and opportunities that students have addressed. We'll also have an opportunity for you to ask questions to the panelists a little bit later as well. But before we get started, I think it would be useful if our panel can just briefly introduce themselves. Would you mind just letting us know your name and your role or position?
Hi everyone, my name is Phillips. I'm chair of English UK, which is the national trade association of all the British Council accredited English language schools in the UK. So we have about 430 members. We teach over 500,000 students every year that come into the UK, and we employ around about 26,000 people in various roles. So it's a big business, and I'm representing them today, so I'm the voice of the industry, really. So very pleased to be here.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shukhrat Kayumov. I'm from representing public education here. Actually, the minister was expected himself to be here because this is very important for him. However, because of his leave to the regions, he cannot attend, and he asked me to be here. I'm working for the Center for Development of ICT, but ICT is not the only role, but is using ICT for development of changing the education itself. And we have two big projects on ICT Nation and English-speaking nation, and that's why we are actually sitting here. And as a Minister of Public Education, represent the biggest employer in Uzbekistan, hiring almost 22,000 English teachers in the direction of English teaching in the schools, actually. So somehow we are representing the state here. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Hikmat Abdurakhmanov. I am most probably representing small and medium enterprises. We, Humo partners, our group of companies, do various, we provide various services for SMEs, and also we have a chain of co-working spaces which gives us an understanding of how startup ecosystem is evolving. And at the same time, I'm chairing the Association of Business and Technologies, plus Global Entrepreneurship Network in Uzbekistan. It's a global initiative that strives to develop entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Hello everybody, I'm Oksana Vovk, National Aviation University. And first of all, let me express my great excitement of being here on this forum, and many thanks to the organizers for your hard work and for all these things. And for me, it was quite unexpected to take part in this panel, so I'm a little bit nervous as a L2 speaker. But you know what I understand from the previous day, and that EMI people, you are all EMI people, are very brave people. As Simon mentioned yesterday about those fast train, we are all on the fast train, and it seems to me that sometimes without break. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. So I think we have a really excellent panel this morning that is representing a wide range of perspectives from industry to government to higher education itself. So we'll be asking them in a little bit to reflect on some of the opportunities and challenges that students have identified in their experience. I want to talk a little bit about my own research into this area, looking at students' experiences in EMI environments. I'm going to talk through two different studies that we conducted in the Netherlands. And the first was at an institution that has historically been an EMI institution for the last 20 or 30 years. It's consistently in Times Higher Education's top most international universities in the world, has an extremely internationalized curriculum. The majority of students at this institution are international students as well. So that's kind of one area, right, that maybe some of your institutions are feeling it might fit within, but you might feel more that your institution is more like the second one that we were studying. And that was an institution who just last year decided that they wanted to change the medium of instruction from Dutch to English. So we were really interested in that transition experience within the institution and how students were feeling as they transitioned from Dutch to English. This was an education program in the second one. The first study was in a business program where students kind of had that knowledge that a internationalized degree would be beneficial to their career in international business. Whereas in study 2, these were students in an education degree who were planning to work as teachers in the local context. So we have a very different comparison of these two groups in terms of their intentions for their degrees. I'm going to talk through a series of quotes, again, just highlighting the student voice, about some of their opportunities and challenges that in our research students have identified when learning in an EMI environment. The first, which I think a lot of that draw from the video that we watched, was about pathways for opportunities. And this was almost exclusively highlighted within that first context, so that institution that historically had taught in an EMI setting. And I'll just, for the benefit of those who are listening to a translation, I'll just read the quote aloud. Please bear with me if you're listening to this in English. But the quote reads, "I think the main benefit is that I gain multiple experiences with different kinds of people. I believe this will help me in the future to communicate with various people at work." And if we think about those intentions of those students in that business degree setting in a highly internationalized university, there was a recognition that our world is very global, and that they wanted their education to reflect that globalness of the world. But quite interestingly, we didn't see any of that at all in the second study with the students who were intending to live and work within the home context. So to us, that brought up questions of intentionality. So how is it that students' intentions for their lives and careers, whether they want to be mobile or not, whether they want to live in a highly contextualized working environment, how does that impact their experiences with EMI? And we found that those students who were in that second institution, the teachers who were just starting to switch to EMI, they came up with a number of concerns about their degrees. The first, and probably the most common, was concerns about quality. And I think we've talked about that quite a lot this conference, so I won't dwell too much on that. But the quote here reads, "I personally do not prefer this," and by this they mean learning in English. "I sometimes experience considerable overload during the lectures. I think this does not benefit my learning process." And what we found was that students were concerned about their own level of English and their ability to engage with their subject matter in an in-depth way in English, but also concerns about their teachers and their teachers' ability to teach in an interactive and in-depth way about their subject area. The second concern, and I think this is probably to me more interesting, was questions about relevance. So to what extent is learning English relevant to their lives and careers after university? The quote here, "I'd rather not learn in English. I don't see the added value that way, and I have no intention of going to work or study abroad. I don't need the English course." I think we've talked quite a lot at this conference about the mobility of students and how learning in English supports the mobility of students and staff. And I think my question is, what about those students who don't want to be mobile? What about those students whose intention, again, is to work and contribute within a highly contextualized local context? And to what extent are they perhaps being left behind when it comes to learning in English? That's a question I'll pose to our panel in a little bit. Those that were working in a highly internationalized environment with lots of international students. So that was primarily our first institution that had a strong focus on internationalization. Talked about concerns related to social segregation. And the quote here, it's people speaking their native language during class, very, very frustrating. Everyone is having these little conversations that you don't even understand. It just means everyone can't communicate. A lot of my work has looked at that social transition experience of students and intercultural learning opportunities. And I'm very critical of this idea that we stick students from different countries together into a classroom and automatically something magic happens and it becomes a meaningful intercultural learning experience. And something that I've sort of noticed over the last few days is that there's a conflation between EMI and internationalization. That somehow, again, if we just change the language of instruction, that we automatically get an intercultural experience. And that's something I'm also a bit critical of. Those of us that work in higher education research differentiate between the globalization of higher education and the internationalization of higher education. Whereas globalization is that reaction of higher education institutions to the increasing interconnectivity of our world. So things like the increasing numbers of international students, the pressures to change the medium of instruction to English, these are reactions to an increasingly connected world, to an increasing connection between English as the lingua franca for our world. The internationalization, though, is a lot more purposeful than that and has a lot more to do with the curriculum and with the pedagogy that we're using, diversifying our materials, developing pedagogies that create an intercultural learning environment for students. And again, my feeling is we can't just stick students from different countries, force them to speak English, and then somehow, again, that magic happens and it's intercultural. There has to be some support, some scaffolding, some focus on the pedagogy throughout that process to get to those end goals that we keep talking about when it comes to EMI. The final thing that I'll highlight from our research was students' concerns about the impact on the local. And we talked about that a little bit yesterday with impacts linguistically on home languages. But students were really concerned about what happens when a generation of students learn in English and then work in the local context with that English education. So the quote here, the target language should be the working language. We are trained to become educationalists for the Dutch context, where we speak Dutch in professional practice. And that came up time and time again, where students were really concerned about how do they go about their practices, their processes, when their education was in English, but their careers were not. And I think that in addition to language, we have to think about our local practices, our local cultures, our local economies. And that's something that I think bears worth mentioning. So I think just in summary, a lot of the concerns that we've addressed in our research with students learning in EMI contexts is that students' concerns really do map along some of the challenges that we have been outlining throughout this conference. So if we're concerned about it, the students are concerned about it as well. And that communication seems to be lacking when we have these top-down policies that impact upon students' experiences. So with that, I think I'll turn the attention towards the panel to kind of ruminate on some of those opportunities and challenges outlined by students. So I'll just ask the panel first, do you have any reactions, initial thoughts to some of these opportunities or challenges outlined by students? No need to be shy.
Let me start. You know, those guys in uniform, it was our students from Aviation University. So honestly saying, taking into account that we have a good experience in English learning project, we are carried out it about more than 15 years. So from my own experience, because students are my responsibility, the sphere of my responsibility, for them, for Ukrainian students, especially for those who are involved in this project, they can see more opportunities than challenges or obstacles.
I can react with probably my personal experience. As a young guy who just entered the university in 1997, I remember that English was definitely a chance to really see the world. And just reacting on what the responses were, I definitely can say that, and from the standpoint right now, I can say that people who know English usually have less fears to develop as a country. And I communicate and interact with people from the government, from the society, with the younger generation and older generation. I can see that English really allows people to be less afraid of changes. So they embrace change, and then they understand that they are much more competitive than they were. So English really helped me a lot to build more competitive business. And we can see that society is becoming much more merit-based these days, which was not the case just 3, 5, 10 years ago, when in order to be successful, you need to have relations, how we call it, not knowledge. But it's changing. And I definitely can say that English really was instrumental, and is, I think, instrumental to really build meritocracy in the society.
Probably everybody knows now that in the government of Uzbekistan, you can be much better promoted as soon as you know English or you studied somewhere abroad. Definitely. So it's a really good chance to become very successful as soon as you know English. That's why all the parents are now very eager to learn, to teach English to the children, even they cannot themselves adopt. But children face a big problems with the barrier of speaking language. They feel shy, or many of the problems which were sounds last day and today, really children are facing this problem. And that is why Public Education Ministry, they started the English-speaking nation largest project, which aimed to achieve at the end of school, public school, the children have to be somehow equal to the IELTS 5.0 level. And we are working on this, and we are really counting a lot on British Council help, and I think we will get it. And also one very interesting point which I want to mention, that in a very much development from the region to region, the difference, like if you go to the very popular tourist hotspots like Samarkand, Khiva, even small children can have a fluent speaking skills, very limited word numbers, but in like 4, 5, 6 general languages, you come and you want to ask them, and they say just coming to you and explaining that you have to buy something. So the place where the tourists come, they speak children. All of the children are already in multiple language. But if you go to the places where there is not much tourists, that only Uzbek left, and even Russian language are lost. This is what we face now. So Minister of Public Education put two languages as a corner, like Uzbek, of course, in Russian and English. So trial language is our aim for every graduator by the graduation. Of course, there are many other languages would be.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really interesting to have the video, first of all, and then some of the quotes from the slides. And the line from the video that I remember was from one of the students who said that it opens the door to worldwide academia. And I think that's something that really struck me, and I think it's really real. But then, at the same time, we look at the challenges that EMI brings up from a country where English is spoken so well. We saw this the EF proficiency index, I think, yesterday, and Holland was and it's either top or always in the high, either top 5 or something like that. But then to see these challenges that exist that EMI throws at these students, it's really interesting. Overwhelmingly for me, and I can see the orange banner at the back of the room, the British Council one that says boosting career prospects, and I think for me that would be the line that EMI brings up, that overwhelmingly it does enhance your career prospects and it boosts the opportunities. That's the position of many English language schools in the UK. That's what we're trying to train students and anyone who comes to study English with us, and that would be my position at the moment.
Thank you very much. And sorry, I'm just getting over a cold, and talking seems to be a challenge at the moment. The next question I wanted to ask the panel then, kind of leading on from that, do we feel that all higher education students benefit from learning in English? Or in the case of our research, are there some students who are perhaps being left behind when it comes to studying in English?
Can I react somehow? I have worked in Ministry of Higher Education, and like 10 years before, we had an experiment when we connected online schools, online libraries to the old universities, and we saw that in that time only like English speaking, as we say, universities like Westminster or Turin, they used very much such English language online libraries, and the medical universities and economical universities use them a lot. But like pedagogical universities or technical universities almost didn't use them at all because there is a big language barrier. But so now it's much changed, and most of the students now are eager to learn English. Even they wish, they have a big desire, but they face that there is not much effective ways to learn English.
I think the answer is yes and yes, really, to answer the questions. So just something on expectations, which is also, you know, the title of this session. In the UK, the students coming into the UK to study English, we have seen this huge downward shift in age over the last 10 years. And whereas 10 years ago, it was about 25% of students coming into the UK were under the age of 18. Now it's well over 50% of the students coming in are under 18. And when the students arrive, and you know this room is full of English language experts, I know, we do this needs analysis with the students to see, you know, what they want out of their English language course. And again, there's been a big shift in the last decade or so, whereas before it was about English for work, English for career success, and now there is this shift more towards English for academic success. And you know, they don't know that it's EMI, they don't call it EMI because they're too young, maybe their parents don't even know that it's EMI, but they have this expectation that when they go back to their home countries, they will be, EMI will feature in what they're doing. It will be part of their higher education studies. So this is, you know, on the expectation side, it's really, it's a very, just with the English language schools and how they adapt to this, they're seeing a demand for more English language because they realize that, you know, going back to their home countries for further studies, they will need English at some point for their higher education.
Yeah, I can jump in here with the perspective of the business, I would say. I doubt that there are so much research on students in Uzbekistan, how they benefit or don't benefit from having English. But what I observe when Uzbekistan really tries to enter the global markets with their either own products or they want to bring some technologies, let's say, and build some competitive enterprise, I still see that, especially in the regions, just recently I visited Fergana Valley, and there was a textile factory, there's quite a successful textile factory that actually exports their products, and neither the owner nor anyone from the management, none of them speak English. And they have only one student, just a graduate from the university, who is such an important person for this enterprise, who is really the guide for this enterprise to sustain their contracts and look for new markets. So in the regions, we still have this strong barrier of the language barrier where businesses are not competitive because they don't communicate. And in many cases, we see when government really wants to push business to be more export-oriented. And we talk about incentives, we talk about subsidizing some industries, but we're not discussing understanding of different cultures. And how can you understand the different culture, let's say a culture of European market, without really speaking their language? So here, English is really instrumental to make our economy more competitive. And I think we are not really paying enough attention to this, really understanding the different cultures, really going to these exhibitions, markets, participating in the different conferences and forums, because English should be the language of networking as well. So how can you sell yourself, how can you sell your product or service without really building these bonds and show that you are a reliable partner who will not switch off the phone and not switch off the website, but will be open for more sustainable period of time. So I think English definitely contributes to the graduates. I doubt that there are, research that proves that, but I think this is something which is really a common sense.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of what we've been speaking to are these industries that are international by nature. And I wonder if maybe anyone on the panel has a thought about some of those more localized practices like education or social work that functions within a very nationalistic sphere and by nature is not quite so international. Do you feel there's a benefit to higher education students from those backgrounds also learning in English?
So I just want to add maybe about the previous question. In our university, I think nobody from our students have to be left behind, and we have just a flexible system. So from the first year, they could make their choice to study in English learning project or ENMI, or just to study in their native language. So I knew some of the students who just can't deal with it and asked us to change the way they were studying. But I also have a good experience with those who decided in 2 years, in 3 years, join the English language group. So I think it's a good system.
Again, I can give you another example where lives of kids really change because they start talking. There's a wonderful city called Rishtan in Fergana. It has a strong traditions in ceramics production. And me, my wife, and kids, we visited this place. It's a place, a wonderful master house where kids work with their hands. So it's a technical job from your question. It's not something, they are not service providers, they are not highly skilled graduates of universities, but these kids are just masters with the ceramics business. But with this inflow of tourists, everyone is representing the country. Everyone is a source of information about culture, about traditions, and tourists, they really love asking questions, right? And they ask questions not from guide necessarily. They want to ask a question from a person who is living his normal life. And in this case, the guy who had certain level of English, he was sharing his own story. And I think these tourists were really inspired by hearing these stories, and they started to help this like ceramics shop by charities, by bringing more customers, by giving the leads, etc. So I think here we can say that English can be a life-changing experience for these kids who also have technical capabilities. They are professionals in their own small fields, but speaking English really opens up new life and world to them, because suddenly they start communicating with people who are coming from absolutely different background, who are coming from absolutely different countries. So I think, again, as my colleague from the ministry said, Shukhrat, like I said, this definitely should be a priority for the government to really transform the country, not just top managers and not just graduates of higher education and elitist universities, but really it should be it should really go to the fields, and it should really embrace other stratas of our society.
Yeah, thank you. I think I want to shift our focus just a little bit. We've talked a lot about the challenges of EMI. We've talked about that from multiple perspectives, from national perspectives, from higher education perspectives. But I'm wondering, does anyone on the panel have any thoughts about students' concerns that learning in English might diminish the quality of their degree compared to learning in their L1 language?
It's a great question. I'd like to see some research on that. Thank you very much. I don't think so. Again, that's a personal view, coming from a UK perspective, what we're trying to do within the training centres in the UK. I think it will only enhance the quality of their degree, not only from the content side, but also from the personal development of the student themselves. We had, during one of the sessions yesterday, on table number 5, during the round table discussion on the benefits and the challenges that EMI brings within a local context. And we spoke quite a lot about confidence and how confidence is really important in the student's own journey learning English and how that develops them as well, learning that additional language. And that was quite a telling conversation around the table with different inputs from different countries. So I think that's part of the question, but I would love to see some research on it. So when you're ready to share that, please do.
I think if we want to ask this question, first of all, we need more information, statistical kind of information from some agencies concerning the rate of employment among EMI students and just students that studied in their native language.
Can I also add something about the, from the, again, schools? We're teaching all these children most in Uzbekistan learning English like 11 years, and by the graduation of the school, they almost all of them just know what is your name and how are you. That's all actually. They feel very shy to speak English. They feel very shy to pretend that they know English actually. If we speak with them and they say, how are you? And they answering, okay, and what is your name? They're answering their names. I say, you can already speak English. So they start to understand that somehow they know English. But before, everybody accepts that they're like zero in English. Even they started 11 years. That's why we're working very hard on how to change the structure. And this actually with the preset program by British Council, it's changed drastically that the English would be more communicative oriented, and knowing English is starting from zero. It's already knowing some English. That's what we like to put in the children's mind. However, if you come to the students when they enter to the university, if you will ask them, are you going to the English speaking course, or you will better to do it in your native language? Most of them say, I will go to the native language, because they are just not sure that the English are good enough. Even the university students who are in like Westminster or Turin Polytechnical or Inha University, they still, as again said yesterday, they still again afraid to speak language because they think like they're not very much good in language. They have bad accent, and that most of the people may laugh on them. It's not good for them. That is why. Be somehow very sure about the language, that language is not an obstacle, not a barrier, not a way to make the fun on them, but it's an opportunity. That's what we have to try somehow to bring to the children's mind. So if you more language, more opportunity. Less language, less opportunity. But still with a very low language, you have opportunity. That's what we have to bring in their minds. And again, most of the children, most of the parents or students, they would like to learn English, they would like to speak very fluent English, but they don't know how to accept, how to learn very fast English. I believe that the modern technologies like ICT, the mobile phones, and English films with subtitles in English or in Russian or whatever language, they can help a lot, so the children can learn from them actually. For instance, we're also trying to experiment with the Han Academy, which online platform, which all the resources are in English. And on Friday we will make an opening of Uzbek version of Han Academy. So in the beginning it will be in Uzbek, so people will adopt to the learning online. Then they will still have to switch to the English, because there is an opportunity for them to learn better resources, and especially like Coursera or Code.org, they can learn something and they can apply for foreign certification of the best universities. That's what they dream about somehow, some dream which they probably will never achieve, because they will still again feel shy. So student personal acceptance is very important for them, and that's what we have to work on in the future, to put in their minds that everyone can do, that everybody really can do it.
I think that's a good transition in a way, because one of the largest challenges is about the challenge of communication with students, about the relevance to English in their lives, and why these top-down policies have been made, and how they're affecting their lives. And we found in our research, for example, that students really questioned the decision to change to EMI, because in their minds it didn't feel relevant to their future careers. And there was no communication between the university and the students students themselves to talk about why that decision had been made. So maybe a question we could ask then, does the panel have any suggestions for innovations or solutions that could support students through these perceived challenges of studying in English? I think we've talked a lot about the problems, but do you have any suggestions? How do we support students through that process?
Well, I'll start. So we talk about this quite a lot, actually, in English UK. As you can imagine, you put 400 or so academics in a room, and all they want to talk about is the way forward and innovative approaches to students' experience and learning outcomes. And one of the things that we are seeing in the UK at the moment is this decline, really, in general English demand and more of a shift towards ESP, English for specific purposes. And that's something that we really have to embrace as an industry, and how technology can be used for the students' benefit. And I see the headsets, the virtual reality headsets at the back of the room, and if you can bring those into real-world situations with learning or curriculum, absolutely the students would benefit from that. One thing that we've done at the past, when I was working at a university in the business faculty, again bringing the real world into the learning classroom, was looking at we linked in with the Bloomberg data database, and as they were learning business English, they were at the same time using real live data, and it just brought everything to life. And this was quite a few years ago, and I'm sure there are more things available now, but I saw that as being quite innovative, and to see the students engage more in that because they saw it was absolutely real for them and really necessary. So more technology, I think, has to be the right answer.
Well, I am the heavy user of audiobooks myself. I still consider myself not just I'm not a native speaker in English, so I still have a feeling that I should definitely develop the language itself, but also I realize that literature in English, professional books about business strategy and management, obviously much more sources found in English. So I use Audible, which is a great tool. Definitely you can pause, you can play, you can replay, you can rewind, and it's really flexible, and it gives you a direct access to the whole, probably, knowledge of the world. The second thing I really like is a Blinkist. It's another app that gives you the summary of the book. And interestingly, it gives you the text and also the audio version. And I think more and more people, they really learn better because they are audials, so they receive information in the audio format. I would like also to stress on the importance of creating a right learning environment. Specifically talking about learning environment, I mean a place where kids, they really feel comfortable and safe. I think me and my team, we were successful in creating this kind of learning environment in our co-working spaces. Currently we have 5 branches in Tashkent and 1 launching in Samarkand soon. So a co-working space is really a safe environment for startuppers. And what we do, it's not just a well-facilitated environment, meaning an interior, a nice interior, not very informal, equalizing kids. If we invite a lot of successful people from business, and what we urge strongly, they come without ties, they come relaxed, in a more casual format that really allows kids to ask more questions and really interact with them. But besides, we also facilitate various international competitions on startups. We are representing startups from Silicon Valley. We facilitate competitions from Switzerland called Seed Stars, and other regional international competitions. I think this really helps them to interact with opinion leaders, and a lot of foreigners, successful investors, angel investors, entrepreneurs, they come and interact. So I think a good combination of technology, as my colleagues said, and I gave you a couple of examples, and really creating a right, safe environment really can make a difference. I just would like to add a couple of sentences on the previous question. I think it's important. Do I think that English can be a barrier in a way in getting a better degree and knowledge? I think yes, especially in the countries that just recently joined a global market, let's say it, where faculty, professors, teachers, they have very, very limited knowledge of English. They can be a barrier. Because we see cases when kids know and understand better rather than their guides, meaning a source of information, the authority. And if the professor or any type of teacher at the university is not comfortable in English, then he or she can become a strong barrier. So I think here, again, as the role of the regulator is to really solve this issue by, I remember a lot of international programs such as, and NGOs were present in Uzbekistan in early 90s. I think this should be revived when we really enhance our peer-to-peer relations with the United States, with United Kingdom and other countries where professors and teachers, they can spend some time on a volunteer basis really sharing their knowledges and techniques with their colleagues in Uzbekistan.
I just can add a few words. You know that it's our main goal to enhance our students to study in English, and it's very interesting because we were inspiring while working on the British Council program Leadership Development, and we had a lot of discussion concerning how to find the best solution to bind all the main stakeholders, because if we want to popularize English among our students, we need to work in accordance with and the requirements of our main stakeholders. So we decided to develop a program, communicative platform. So Noosphere Innovative Ecosystem was appeared, and this, the main task of this ecosystem was to make our students feel themselves absolutely free to communicate with different people, especially those who are quite successful in their life. Thus, another two projects appears, social projects like History of Success at Now and Students' Well-being. Also, in the frame of our platform, we have a startup school and business incubator, and also we open technology and innovative support center, and also we have English language certification center for teaching staff. So we try to do our best to support our children, to support our students. Sorry, they don't like when we call them children, you know. So that was our support. That was our solutions, and we try to work as hard as we can. Thank you.
Is there any quick questions from those in the audience that they wish to ask the panel? Yeah, there's one in the middle here.
Thank you to the panelists. Very interesting discussion. I have two questions. My first question is to the representative of Aviation Academy. I'm sorry, I don't see your name here. And regarding the learning in English, whether learning in English may diminish the quality of degree, and I understand by diminishing the quality of content knowledge. This is how it can diminish the quality of the degree. You actually have two tracks. One track is English medium track, and I understand the second track is non-English medium track, right? So I wonder if you ever do a comparative assessment of content knowledge by the time they graduate the university to compare the results of those who study in English and those who study in their native language to see whose content knowledge is better. So you said that you need more data, and I think that would be a very helpful data to understand whether English diminishes or no. At AD University, where the instruction is in English, purely in English, I can say that it's a very successful English medium instruction model. One of the things we do to maintain quality English medium instruction is constant data analysis. So we analyze academic performance of our students and try to find out what are the reasons of poor performance, I mean of the students with poor performance and strong performance, and try to overcome problems based on the data that we get. Whether we need intervention in the English language program, whether we need to provide more support in the mainstream program or any others. So I wonder if you do this kind of analysis at your university.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. Sorry, just in the nature of time. Do you have a quick response to that question?
I try. Unfortunately, we didn't start research yet, but I think it's quite important, especially taking into account all those today's discussion concerning assessment. I think that with the help of all you and experts, we can do our best. As for diminishing the diploma quality, I don't think so, because just in my experience, I was a diploma. I revised some diplomas, and I was a supervisor of some diplomas. And as for those students who were involved in English language projects, usually their diplomas was of a higher quality than of just students from L1 classes, L1 groups.
This is just an observation, or it's some data-driven conclusion?
That's only my observation.
That's your observation.
Okay,
and my second
sorry,
question,
we're out of time, so I'm going to stop you there.
My second question
right,
to
I'm
Mr.
sorry, we really don't have time. So my suggestion is over lunch, if the two of you want to connect and discuss that further.
No, I have one more question to Mr. Ikramov.
Yes.
Can I?
Is it very, very fast?
Very quick, very quick.
Okay, it's exceptionally fast.
Yeah. Did you study at university with AMI model or a simple university where the medium of instruction was Russian or your native? Yes.
I personally studied here at the University of World Economy and Diplomacy. Then I studied in UK, St. Andrews. And then I spent a lot of time traveling around and living in different places.
So it wasn't AMI model, right?
Please explain me what EMI is, because I'm not from your field. I am just
English as a medium of instruction.
Oh, no. Well, I was taught in English in UK, if that's a response to your question.
No, okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If I can just very briefly summarize, I think that what is common here is a call for more research. We've heard that from several of our panelists, to see if those concerns from students are founded within the research. But I would argue, even if they're unfounded, the fact that those concerns exist should be a cause for concern for those of us working in institutions. So I hope that this was an opportunity to really reflect on the students, their voices, their experiences, and to critically examine some of the assumptions that we have about the opportunities, and our assumptions that they will be universally acknowledged by students, which from our own research we know to be false. So what I would really push for as we go into the final session and into lunch is to think about a really purposeful examination or reimagination of those underlying assumptions, of what the assumed outcomes of EMI are and how that links to our pedagogy. I think we need to keep saying that word, pedagogy. So on that note, I'll end. Thank you very much to the panelists. It was really lovely to have your perspectives. Thank you.